Hello and welcome back to the Chelmsford News Show. I'm Tom Christiano. Well, today I'm very excited because we have a good friend of mine on the show, Sam Chase. Sam has served on the Chelmsford Select Board. At that time it was called the Board of Selectmen. He served 24 years as a town meeting representative. He served for many years on the Chelmsford Board of Assessors, the Economic Development Commission, the Finance Committee. He was a chair of the Finance Committee, right, for many years.
Yes, it was. Mm-hmm.
So Sam has done a lot for this town. So thanks for being here, Sam.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's nice to sit on the other side of the table.
That's right. And I didn't mention, Sam has his own show. What's the name of that show?
Chasing the Facts.
Chasing the Facts. And how long have you been doing that now, Sam?
Well, let's see. Pete could probably tell you. I think it's going on 3 years.
Around 3 years?
Yeah.
And how do you like it so far?
I actually like it, and as you know, I'm not really a media person, and I kind of had to be talked into doing the show. Oh. And we went back and forth with Vilu, and we negotiated. He wanted an hour. I said no, a half hour, that kind of thing.
Really?
So we settled on the format, and it was pretty rough at the start because, again, this is not my milieu, as they say. Okay, but I watched other people for many years on local cable. You and Joe Reddy was someone, and Dennis Reddy, another one. And I've sort of learned some interviewing technique, and I'm still learning. I'm not there yet. I'm not as smooth and polished as I would like to be, but it's a learning process.
Well, I think you're
I enjoy it.
I think you're smooth and polished. You're doing a great job. I watch your show sometimes, and
thank you.
I think you're doing great. And there's nothing you need to improve, I think, Sam. It's going
I
great.
Appreciate it.
And you're having good guests on, very interesting guests. And in fact, you had Simon Cataldo on recently, who was running for state representative. Mm-hmm. And that was a great interview. And that's a nice thing about local TV, right? That we get to focus on a lot of people who are running for office or in office. Like I just had Ken Lefebvre, a select person, on the show.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I love it. I don't know. I wasn't reluctant to do it, as you may know. I started in 1995.
Well, you've been doing it for many, many years.
Yeah.
And your show is somewhat like mine because it's a local affairs fact-based show. Yes. Okay, yes. It's not a political controversy type thing. We're trying to get accurate information out to the public, which in this day of political discourse having degraded to the degree it has is not an easy thing to do, to just get the facts out there.
Yes, so that's for sure.
Yeah, I think it's a good service.
I love the truth, and I don't like it when people say falsehoods.
Nope.
I watch political shows like probably 3 or 4 hours a day, national political shows, and I know, and I read 5 newspapers a day that I subscribe to, mm-hmm. So I know there's a lot of falsehoods out there, and it really bothers me that people are saying false things. They're totally false. In fact, people have gotten caught, they're saying, I wasn't there on, say, January 6th, and then they have the video of them on the tour, leading a tour the day before January 6th.
It's an insult to the intelligence of the public.
I know,
and this is nothing new. I mean, anyone who thinks this is recent needs to go back and read their American history. This has been going on since the first days of the Republic, okay? It's greatly amplified, of course, because of the social media and the internet access and so forth. It's just much more pervasive, and people have instant access to information. But it's basically human nature, and I don't think it's going to change much, unfortunately.
Which will be you know what I'm worried about? Before we get in, talk about your classic car, which we will very soon, we have an election coming up in 2024 for the presidency. Mm-hmm. And we have the midterms coming up this year. Maybe we'll talk about that later, the midterms. Mm-hmm. But in 2024, say somebody runs for office and doesn't win, like loses by 7 million votes or something, but then says, oh, I won. And then with all the state legislatures...
You mean loses the popular vote?
Yeah, and loses the election, too. No, loses the election.
Okay, loses the electoral vote.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
And the popular vote, which is what happened in 2020, right. But then declares that, oh no, it was rigged, it was fixed, I really won the election. But now, so many changes have taken place within state legislatures. As you know, all these campaigns are going on now. They're putting people into place that go along with these lies, that don't care about democracy anymore. Sam, I'm really concerned about our losing our democratic government to go into an autocracy after the next presidential election. But when they try to have that, Sam, I'm really concerned about a second civil war. Tell me where I'm wrong about that. But I really,
Well,
record this because we want to see.
Anything is possible. I mean,
Yes.
you can't discount anything. I mean, I'm 75 years old. I think you're close to that.
Yes.
We've lived a long time.
Yeah.
We've seen things in cycles,
Yeah.
okay? So I've learned to never say, that couldn't possibly happen.
Yeah.
But what are the chances? I think it's remote, because I think what our history has shown us over the last 150 years, and I'll start with the Civil War, okay, is that these things tend to go in waves and cycles. And eventually, over the long term, for lack of a better way of characterizing it, sanity prevails, okay? And I have a lot of faith and trust in the basic common sense of the American people. I do. And it's very, very easy to get whipped into a frenzy when you do watch several hours of the media every day and you allow yourself to go to those dark places. But I think what we need to do is we need to take stock and we need to have faith in ourselves as a people and as Americans, and I think it's going to come out all right in the end. I do.
I certainly hope you're correct, Sam, because it has to do with our future, too, for another 20, 30 years that we're on this planet.
I have grandchildren, and I'm greatly
want us
concerned
to
about that.
retain our democracy. I don't have as much faith as you do in what I've seen of human beings, about 30 or 40% of them, and sometimes that's all you need to overturn a democratic government if the right people are in the right places for their cause. So I'm more concerned, but I'm in agreement with you. I hope it never happens, Sam. But I've never seen this happen to our country. And I voted in elections since 1976, presidential elections. I've never seen what's happening now happen previously in this country. And I've never seen where a losing president didn't say, I lost, and go to the inauguration. In the last election, we had the losing president.
John Adams, number 2. He got so upset and so angry that he lost the election to Jefferson. He left the Capitol before Jefferson was sworn in. And there have been a couple of other instances
Yeah, but
where
did
the
he
president...
protest and said, I'm really the president? And he...
No, he didn't do that. But I'm just telling you that there have been times in history where the protocol has not been observed.
Yeah, I don't think that often, though, Sam.
No, it hasn't happened that. It hasn't happened
I mean,
that.
in modern history, it's never happened in my lifetime until 2020. And person still hasn't conceded, the person who lost that election. But anyway, notwithstanding that, I'm just concerned about that. But hopefully we could get on to more pleasant issues now, which is you have a Dodge Dart, which is a classic car, an antique, I guess you'd call it. What year is it, Sam?
1965.
And it's what, a light green of some sort?
It's a, I'm trying to think of the actual name of the color.
Oh, that's okay.
It's sort of a medium tan. They call it a champagne color.
Champagne, I see.
Okay, it's in very nice shape. And of course, as you know, I had a 1950 Dodge Coronet, four-door sedan. Had that for almost 16 years.
Wow.
And then it got to the point where it needed just an enormous amount of work, and I didn't want to put that much time and money into it. So sold that car, and I bought this one, 1965 Dodge Dart. What a difference 15 years makes in terms of development of the automobile. This one is more like a modern car, and it is just a lot easier to work on.
Yes.
It's smaller and it's lighter, so it's easier to drive and handle. And I think I'm going to enjoy it very much. And
How long have you had it?
And you'll see it in the parade this year. I bought it at the end of August last year.
The end of August last year. I probably took your photo. I think I did it in the
may
parade
have.
last year, I think. And I know previous years with your black car that you had, the Dodge. So it's, what year did you say it is?
65.
65, automatic transmission.
Oh, no. I would never have an automatic transmission in a classic car.
So what do you have, 3 in the column?
3-speed on the column.
My
It's what they call, it's a 2-door post sedan. It's the entry-level model. It's what they call a stripper car. No power anything. Standard shift, manual steering, manual brakes, no power windows,
Oh, my God.
no air conditioning, blah, 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 blah.
No air
But
conditioning, yeah.
the car is light enough
Yeah.
that you don't need the power steering. Even my wife drove the car a few weeks ago for the first time,
Yeah.
and even she said, she said, I don't feel the need for power steering on this car. So
that's
it's
good.
it's not necessary.
That's good.
And the 3-speed manual shift is easy to drive, So, I mean, but one of the reasons you get a car like that is because you want to drive the car, okay? But it's a lot easier to repair. The older automatics are problematic because there aren't that many people around that know how to work on a 1965 torque flight transmission, okay?
Oh.
But any competent mechanic can fix a 3-speed standard.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, so there's a rationale behind that as well.
that's good.
Yep.
Speaking of parades, are you going to go to the Memorial Day parade?
I wouldn't miss it.
Good, good. Yeah, you're very patriotic, I know.
Well, yes.
You love our country, and you even watch so many meetings, select board meetings, and you attend so many too, with the finance committee now and the assessors. You're the chairman of that board. You do so much, Sam. How do you find the time? Well, now you're retired.
Well, I'm
from
retired, so it's a little easier.
Yeah, that's good.
Right.
I think the best people on the boards are retired because they have the time to
There
put
are
into it,
a lot of retirees on our town boards.
which I appreciate. I prefer that, actually, because they have the time to devote
Exactly.
to it. You were a select person. You probably put 20 hours a week maybe on the select.
There were
as a select
some
person.
well, it depends on the time of year and what you were doing. There were some weeks you would do maybe 7 to 10 hours. There were other weeks where I was doing 40 hours. It depended on what you were doing. When I was first elected to the board, the hot issue was tax classification, split rate. And it was very controversial. There had been a report done by a study committee that was a little bit questionable. And so one of the things that I said I would do if I got elected was I said, we're going to really study this issue the way it should be done. Yeah. Now, I have a finance and audit background, so this was kind of right up my alley, because I was used to doing this kind of work. And that summer, I spent the whole summer, really kind of gave up my vacations, and there was a period there for about 2 or 3 months I was putting in 40, 45 hours a week doing the research, holding hearings, because we had people from the Department of Revenue come out, and we interviewed lots of folks, and so that's an extreme case, okay, because that was a project that I was working on.
Tax classification, you said, right?
But I think for the average select person who really wants to do the job the way it should be done, it requires a lot of reading and a lot of research, and you have to pay attention.
Yes.
In the aggregate, I would say you have to spend at least 15 hours a week, and some weeks it's going to be 15 to 30 hours.
Wow.
If the job is done the way it is supposed to be done,
yes.
That's how much time it takes. And the only other committee assignment I can think of where the time commitment is equal or maybe even more than that would be school committee.
Yes.
The school committee members, if you want to do that job properly, that is one constant study. Yes. That's what you do if you're a school committee person. Yeah.
You're right. So, as you said, if you put in 20, 30 or more hours to be a select person, select man or select woman, and you have a 40-hour-a-week full-time job.
It's a killer.
And then say you have a family, you
killer.
wouldn't have time to spend with your children, your wife or husband. It's just, so that's why if somebody's retired, I think they might have enough time to do the job right.
It makes a big difference.
Yeah, so, but anyway, I'm glad that you've done all these things. You continue to do them. You're a chairperson of the Board of Assessors right now. Could you tell us?
14 years.
What is the Board of Assessors?
In fact, my term is up in June, which I didn't realize until I got a notice from the town manager's office, and they said, your term is up. And I said, oh, I thought I had another year. So, okay, it's up. She says it's up. It must be up. And do you want to be reappointed? And I thought, another 3 years. Yeah. And I enjoy the work very much. Oh. And I like especially working with our chief assessor, Frank Green, who, in my opinion, is one of the best assessors in the state. And Frank knows his business. He knows it well, and he's very good in dealing with the public as well. So I called Frank and I said, my term is up, and I said, I'm trying to decide what to do, and I said, how much longer have you got? Because Frank is in his early 60s, so he could retire at some point. And he said, well, I'm going to stay for a while. I said, all right, I'll re-up. So I guess I've asked to be reappointed. So we'll see what the town manager does, because it's a town manager appointment, and he doesn't have to reappoint me. But you know, we'll
But
see.
he probably will, I hope.
I would expect.
sure.
I would expect so.
Yeah. So what does the Board of Assessors do, Sam? What
Well,
functions?
statutorily, okay, the responsibility is very codified in state law. And statutorily, we are responsible for the fair and accurate assessment of all property, real and personal, in the town of Chelmsford that is subject to the property tax process, okay? And that includes vehicles. A lot of people don't realize that the assessors administer the motor vehicle excise tax, okay? So we're responsible for those commitments and so forth. The actual work in Chelmsford, however, even though the board is the statutory authority and we're the ones who sign all of the LA forms and the recap forms and so forth, the actual work is done by a paid assessor, which is who is Frank Green. He's the chief assessor, and he has an office staff of 3 people. There's an assistant assessor, and then there's 2 support folks. Yeah. So it's a 4-person operation, and they're the ones who manage the day-to-day operations. Yeah. What the board does do, though, as far as the oversight is concerned, we are responsible for the appeals process. So if you get your tax bill and you think your property value is too high, which of course leads to a higher tax bill, and you think that the assessed value is wrong, then you have the right to file an appeal with the Board of Assessors. And you've got 30 days from the time your tax bill goes out, and we'll get the appeal, and you make your case. You can do it in written form, which you have to fill out the form, or if you want, you can come before the board and speak to the board and make your case that way. And then, based on the information that you supplied, we'll make a decision as to whether or not you are entitled to an abatement or whether we feel your assessed value is accurate as it stands. So the assessors are responsible for that. So we do the abatements, and we also do the exemptions. So depending on your economic status and your age, you may be eligible for any number of tax exemptions, which is just basically a credit on your tax bill.
Yes.
So, you know, the statutory ones are for blindness, you get a $500 credit for that. There are several different types of elderly exemption that you might qualify for. It's all income-based and age-based. And then there are tax deferrals, where you can actually enter into an agreement with the town to not pay your property tax, but what happens is the town essentially takes a lien on your property, okay? And then on your demise, then that's all settled with your estate. Yeah, so there are numbers, but the assessors are responsible for administering all those programs.
Wow. Could I ask approximately how many requests for tax abatement, you might say, or reductions in the assessments do you get? Because that goes before your committee, I think you said. About how many a year do you get?
Well, it varies year to year depending on the values that are assessed. But the bulk of the abatement requests are from commercial property owners, not residential. So we probably get maybe anywhere from 25 to 35 or 40 residential abatements a year, which is low when you consider the number of properties we have. And then probably somewhere between, I'm thinking over the last 14 years, and I'm going to say between 50 and 120 or so commercial abatements.
Per year?
Yeah.
That's more than I would have guessed.
It hasn't been that high. The last time it was that high is when we did the measure and list 7 or 8 years ago, where we actually sent somebody out.
Yeah, I remember.
The abatements were very high that year. Okay, so.
But normally, in an average year, you might get 120 or something,
Yeah.
commercial?
Yeah. No, that's high. We would probably get
Oh.
closer to 50 or 60
Oh.
on an average for commercial.
I see. And then,
And then maybe 25 or 30 on
so
residential.
somewhere in the neighborhood of 100
Yeah,
combined
yeah, right.
on average, which is still, that's 2 per week
Yeah,
on
it's
average.
a lot. It's a lot.
It's a lot, yeah. So your committee board is responsible to review all that.
Yeah.
And then it goes before Frank Green, or no?
No, we make the decision on the
You do?
abatements,
Okay, great.
yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, we
It's
make
good to
the
be the decision maker.
We make the decision. As I said, the way it's set up in Massachusetts, the board is the statutory authority. So we sign off on everything. So, Frank does a recap sheet. It goes into the Department of Revenue every fall preparatory to setting the tax rate. Well, he does all the work, but we have to sign the form. Okay, so again, statutorily, we have the authority, but again, the actual work
Yes.
is done by a paid professional.
Yeah. And I agree with you about Frank. He's a great
Oh,
guy. He
terrific.
works hard.
Terrific.
And he's always friendly when he sees
Yep.
me. And so I like it. But you mentioned tax classification, how involved you were when you were on the select board
Yes.
with that. So right now, we have a split tax
Yes.
rate. Commercial and industrial pay a higher rate than residential, it
Correct.
seems to me. Was it like 19, 20%? Say 120 for commercial and 100 for residential.
I think the differential is 22.
Okay, it's close, 22.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that, Sam? Do you think we should slowly get back to parity the way we were for many years? Or what's your thoughts about
Well,
that?
officially, the board takes no position on whether we should have a unified rate or a split rate. And
Oh,
I'll-
the Board of Assessors.
Yeah,
right?
and let me
But-
and let me explain why that is. That's not true in many cities and towns. In a lot of cities and towns, the assessors will actually get up and say, "Oh, I think we ought to do a split rate, or we shouldn't do a split rate, or whatever." When I first came on the Board of Assessors, one of the first things I said is, if this board is of the opinion that they need to take a position on a split tax rate, then I resign. Because I feel very, very strongly that the Board of Assessors should not take that position. Because largely what they do in most towns is largely the assessors take the position that there should be a split tax rate. And the way that's perceived by the public is the assessor says there ought to be a split tax rate. The assessor is taking the political position that commercial property owners should pay at a higher rate.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, they're going to start questioning the valuations.
Yeah.
Well, if they think that, I wonder if they're monkeying around with the commercial property valuations to get more money out of the businesses.
Yes.
You don't want assessors with a thumb on the scale. You don't want that.
Yes.
So it is better, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, and there are lots of people who disagree with me, that I think the board should remain neutral on the subject of a split tax rate. And when I say neutral, I mean neutral. So even if I personally had the opinion that there should be a unified rate, the select board makes that decision. That is their call, and I support it 100%, okay?
Yeah, but what do you think about the select board? Do you think they should move towards parity, equality between the residential businesses? Or do you think it's fine the way it is with the businesses paying at a higher rate?
I think from a personal standpoint, and again, you have to look at the particular dynamic that's going on in your municipality, okay? The preponderance of commercial property businesses in Chelmsford are small businesses. And the split rate or the higher tax rate for the commercial property owner hits the small owner particularly hard.
Yes.
I doubt if UPS gives it a second thought, okay? But Bob's Coin Shop, Bob's out of business now, but I'll use him as an example. Bob's Coin Shop in the center of Chelmsford, when he was there, mom and pop business, that extra $1,600 a year is a real hit to him,
Yes.
okay?
Yeah.
Now, even the legislature recognized that because there is a provision in the law for a small commercial exemption, which we do in Chelmsford, and I am very pleased that the board chooses to do a small commercial exemption.
Yeah.
And the idea is that it helps the really small commercial operation from paying so much more on a split tax. So in Chelmsford, the small commercial exemption is basically 10%. So if I'm a small commercial business and I have to pay an extra $2,000 a year because of a split rate, but I qualify for the small commercial exemption, then I'm going to get $200 off on that. Okay,
Yeah.
so it helps.
So it's a 10% of the $2,000.
Yeah, right.
It's not really that much though, Sam, but it's better than nothing.
It's better than nothing.
But it's really not much. They really should
Right.
give them a big exemption, but it's
Right.
hard because I don't think the towns could just do that, give the small
Actually,
business.
you know, Tom, I have to go back and correct myself. I just misspoke and I misstated something, and I want to correct it. It's not 10% of the tax bill, it's 10% of the value. So if I'm a small business and I'm assessed at $500,000, the 10% means that I will now be assessed as if my business were worth $400,000. So it's actually a bigger tax break, because I'm not going to pay property tax on $100,000.
But it's only 10%, right? So
It's 10% of the value,
of
not
value, but say the
not
value is
tax.
500,000,
Yeah.
10% would get you down to 450, I believe. 10% of
Yeah, it
500,000,
would get you down to
50,000.
450, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't know. I looked at it before, and I don't think it was a huge benefit. It was something.
It
for the
is,
small-
it is.
But I wish it was much larger because I'm with you. I'm very
Well,
concerned.
it can be higher.
About the small
It
businesses.
can go up. I think it can go up to 25%.
Well, I wish our town would do that. The select people.
Well,
whoever's-
but the problem is, if you do that, then the balance of the commercial property owners have to make up the difference. Okay, so if you give just
Right.
like the residents, you give the residents a small break, then the commercial property owners have to pay
Yeah.
the
But-
break that the residents get.
But as you said before, UPS probably doesn't even pay attention. The bigger companies to
They will
that.
they
So-
will pay attention to it when they're making siting and locational decisions. It's not a major factor,
Right.
but it is a factor.
Yeah.
When any business makes a decision as to where to locate,
Yeah.
all costs are taken
Oh,
into
yes.
consideration.
Oh, I agree.
So
But-
the studies I've read on this say that the level of local taxation generally comes in around somewhere between 10 and 15th on the list of
Yes,
things. It's
yeah.
not number one,
Right.
but it is a consideration.
Yeah, but it's way down there.
Yeah,
But you're
it
right
is down
Tim.
there, yeah.
But Sam, our time is running out already. We
Yep.
only have a couple of
That's
minutes
okay.
left. It's amazing. But one thing I wanted to ask you, during the past few years, because real estate has gone way up, we seem to be paying so much more in our property taxes
Mm-hmm.
now. Is there any way we could slow down those increases or keep it flat? Or how could we keep our property taxes down?
Okay, and I'll answer your question. I'm an Irishman, so I can do this. I'll answer the question by asking you a question. Do you know of any town around us where the property tax is not increasing at about the same or greater rate than Chelmsford?
No, I don't.
No, there isn't. Okay, so you've answered the question, and I'm not excusing the fact that the taxes have gone up. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just
Oh,
trying
no.
to make a point
Yeah.
that if we live in Chelmsford, let's not be fooled that what's going on here is not also going on almost every other place.
Oh, yes,
okay?
I agree, Sam.
So what can we do? About 80% of the town's budget is funded by the property tax. So there are four major sources: property tax, state aid, local receipts, and available funds, okay? And that's in decreasing order of percentage. So your real estate tax funds roughly 80% of your budget, your state aid funds roughly 15% of your budget, your local receipts fund roughly 5 or 6% of your budget, and then the available funds, which is a small amount afterwards. So the property tax is the big thing, isn't it? About 80%. So how do you mitigate that? It's very simple. You spend less money.
Right.
That's the only thing you can do, because you can't adjust the state aid.
Yes. And
Okay.
the biggest, you've been you're on the finance committee, you've been
Right.
on it for many years. Isn't payroll, personnel, the biggest expense out
Well,
of
yeah,
our
because
budget?
government is a service organization.
Yes.
Any government,
So-
people and personnel costs are the biggest.
So if you want to keep, and we have to close, but if you want to keep the expenditures down, don't we have to like freeze, not hire any more people? And just
Spend less
stop
money.
this? And that way we could at least stop
Right.
the increase so high. So I think we have to sacrifice and not hire as many people. But it wasn't a sacrifice having you on the show. It was a great pleasure,
you.
Sam. It's always fun talking with you. Sometimes we talk on the phone for hours, but it's great having you on the show, Sam. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you all
Good to be
for
here.
watching. I'm Tom Christiano. Ciao.